The second Kirby Air Riders Direct happened, and depression was cured. Pinch my Waddle Dee, my King DDD, my DD Destroyer Z, but what even was that Direct? The first one was already unexpectedly long for a single game, but it needed to properly reveal Air Riders and set the stage for its scope. Considering Sakurai's tendency to dive deep into every little detail, it wasn't too surprising that it was so stuffed. Still, a full hour dedicated to the same title that already seemed to have revealed its core appeal felt a bit overblown at first. We had a rough idea of what they might show, mainly the T story mode, but the amount of content revealed is staggering even for a Kirby spin-off. Nova hit puberty, Daroach became your wife's boyfriend, and Sakurai played with toys again. We got machine voice acting before voice acting in Pokemon. His off-screen audience returned, but they didn't laugh a single time. Must have been a rough crowd. Just like the last time, I will add my zenf on every major announcement and try my best not to act like this is about to be the greatest game ever created. Now I want you to hold your ground for the most exciting reveal. Top right is indeed returning, and we can all finally rest. Crossing off the mandatory top right joke every Air Ride video needs, I'm actually glad to see it back. As Sakurai said himself, it wouldn't have been a huge loss if it didn't make it, but they did it anyway. Which basically sums up his entire career and why people love his games. Top right itself is fundamentally the same, but with a few minor yet clear differences. This time you can choose both your character and machine, as well as a control scheme that mimics the playstyles of the original's vehicles. This is a clear trend throughout Air Riders, where many design choices are made because they require minimal resources while still functioning perfectly well, including all the machines in this mode rather than limiting it to the two specific ones from Air Ride. Adds variety without overextending development. After all, they only needed to portray characters from a top-down view and not change any animations, skipping the need to remake the red and blue machines from scratch. The same goes for the new tracks. While their layouts are entirely original, their theming is based on the racing mode's courses. You could argue this was also the case in the original Air Ride, but here it feels more deliberate. As Sakurai pointed out, if some players for whatever reason only want to play top right, they can still experience the atmosphere and visual flair of the main tracks. The new courses are also noticeably larger, and you now have the option to adjust the camera to match the depth and perspective you're most comfortable with. It seems Top Right has received the least changes to its core gameplay, which is perfectly fine for a simple mode that wasn't even guaranteed to return. Unlocking achievements should give it some replay value, and maybe it will even develop a hyper-competitive scene online. Having only 8 new tracks might seem disappointing at first, but as I mentioned in the last video, most of them appear to cover multiple themes. Steamgust Forge is already shaping up to be my favorite, and while some people claim the game doesn't look visually appealing, certain shots left a great impression. One of the biggest surprises was the return of not just a few, but all tracks from the original Air Ride, bumping the total up to 16. Since most players never experienced the first installment, these effectively feel like 16 brand new courses for just one of the game's modes, and I couldn't have asked for more. The fact they even brought up the finish times will differ from the ones before as a potential downside speaks to the game's quality and self-confidence. Swap Rally is another attempt to give Air Ride more depth by having players swap machines mid-races every time they pass a lap. Real estate behind the moon is cheap, but I have genuinely never seen a feature like this in a fun racer, and it almost feels like the racing version of Stage Morph from Smash Ultimate. Since enemies roam the tracks flexibly, it's hard to tell how much the moment-to-moment gameplay on each lap will differ, so it's possible that certain vehicles might shine on specific laps or tracks. Either way, I'm happy the Air Ride mode is finally getting the attention it needed to go beyond fine, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being just as popular as City Trial. The remaining missing machines have finally been revealed, along with a handful of new ones. Transform Star makes a somewhat overpowered impression since it can change its form with a simple flick, but we still don't know how much of a difference each form actually makes. Hopstar is also intriguing with its ability to jump at will. Again, it's unclear how useful that will be in practice, but just like with the tracks, it's pure nostalgia having all machines in one game. Wheelie Scooter in particular is almost guaranteed to be one of the best machines, thanks to its sharp turning capabilities. That might not translate as well to City Trial, but that's exactly the appeal of the entire game. Different modes for different machines. And if none of them suit your taste, you can build your own machine by using one of the existing ones as a blueprint. The My Machine feature reminds me of the kind of creative side modes games used to have back in the day, which seem oddly absent in many titles today. The customization options are surprisingly in-depth, and some machines can take on completely different vibes, transforming into something that feels entirely new. Apparently, you can even change the color of accessories, games, and although it wasn't specifically mentioned in the Direct, the Switch 2's mouse functionality would be the ideal control method for designing. Back in the day, I used countless hours in these kinds of creation modes, which is why I love games like Mario Maker. The My Machine feature adds endless variety to an already solid selection of vehicles, and if you're not feeling creative, there's even the option to buy other players' creations. Who cares about crypto bros? I'm gambling at the machine market. It looks like a fun little system for exchanging ideas with other players, and I love how the value of your machine goes up if many people buy it. Can't wait for the machine market crash of 2025. Judging by the short clip shown during the free run presentation, it seems like there are at least 2 machines still unannounced. The gummies also blatantly teased something, so it's nice to see they didn't spoil the entire game, though at times it might feel like they almost did. The online mode was arguably one of my biggest concerns, and to some extent it still is. While we won't be able to judge the actual connection quality and release, everything else leaves a positive impression. Instead of a generic online profile, we get a customizable driver's license, which fits the game's theming perfectly. I have always appreciated when games contextualize their features in a way that matches their core identity, and this feels like a small but thoughtful touch that adds to the immersion. Coming from Smash Ultimate, Air Riders' overall online infrastructure is a noticeable improvement. Having every mode playable online might seem like a given, but in games like Smash, that wasn't always the case. Smash Run, for instance, was limited to local play, and while I doubt you'll be able to customize rules perfectly in a random online match, I also don't think the standard rules for each mode will need major tweaking to be fun. What stands out even more is the sweet little online lobby where players can interact, spectate random matches. It's far more charming and engaging than a basic menu, and it's another welcome excuse to control Kirby characters in 3D. Much to my surprise, there will actually be ranks this time, something I didn't expect, especially considering Smash had none, and this is a fundraiser. But they are not your typical A, B, C or S plus ranks like Splatoon, just simple colors. Think of them as a way to accurately categorize players, that way everyone has a good time playing. So it's basically a ranking system with higher ranks and lower tiers. They just really want you to feel good about it. A higher rank doesn't mean you're more important. Yes? Something they almost brushed over like a side note was how your rank actually affects gameplay. Depending on which color you have, it can influence what happens to you during City Trial. Most online games try to match players based on skill, but there are usually still noticeable gaps. Your challenge typically depends on how good your opponents are, which doesn't always create the experience the game wants you to have. By introducing extra hardships or modifiers that only apply to higher ranks, Air Riders ensures that skilled players stay on their toes. It makes the whole experience more dynamic and balanced even when you're not directly fighting better opponents. It's another smart idea I never really considered, and it shows how much they are trying to extend the game's longevity in clever, unexpected ways. Likewise, achievements aren't simply carried over. Fortunately, they function much like an air ride. Once you complete a goal, the objectives in adjacent boxes become visible. The general amount feels satisfying, but the real strength lies in how thoughtful they are designed. As before, machines and characters are unlocked through specific achievements. However, because there are so many of them, tracking down a single requirement for your favorite character can be a hassle. It's essentially one objective out of 100, making unlockables feel a bit random at times. To avoid the issue of needing a huge list of achievements just to provide both replayability and meaningful unlockables, characters and machines are now tied to multiple missions. Even better, if you manage to unlock the same character twice, you'll receive an alternate skin instead. Just recently, I replayed Air Ride and realized I had no idea how to unlock Meta Knight or DDD. The checklist could simply show the corresponding reward, but that would take away a lot of the excitement. While the system is essentially built on achievements, it also functions like an additional mission mode. Now you can directly attempt a specific objective under the correct conditions by selecting its box. This effectively turns achievements into their own mission mode, since selecting a target from the checklist feels no different than choosing a mission card. With 4 dedicated achievement boards for each mode, the total playtime increases dramatically, and you're almost always unlocking something even without actively trying, especially during the first few hours. I also appreciate how Sakurai emphasizes that no machines or characters are locked behind the online checklist, because requiring a paid online online membership to fully experience the game would be somewhat scummy. Speaking of scummy decisions, the amiibo are the only true disappointing part of Air Riders. The figures themselves look great, larger than regular amiibo, with detailed designs and the fun feature of swapping out characters. And in typical modern Nintendo fashion, these glorified McDonald's toys are absurdly overpriced. If you plan on buying every single amiibo alongside the game, you're looking at a total of over $300. That's incredibly greedy, especially for a franchise where the core audience is still kids. The one bit of good news is that the amiibo features are completely optional and very minimal. They only let you train a CPU machine, similar to how amiibo fighters worked in Smash. That said, it still irritates me more than it should that I can't customize my little menu cursor unless I pay extra, but thankfully Air Riders content remains untouched by these questionable business decisions, and it only affects secondary merchandise outside the game itself. The last Direct gave a detailed breakdown of the new version of City Trial, so I didn't expect much new information this time. Most of the reveals were confirmations, field events we had already seen or returning items from the original. Naturally, the legendary machines are back, and while I secretly hoped for a third one, having both Dragoon and Hydra return is more than enough. Despite what the game might suggest, having a legendary machine never guaranteed victory. Their immense strength could actually be a disadvantage depending on the minigame. Sakurai pointed this out in the last Direct. Soaring around uncontrollably with Dragoon won't help in certain challenges, and the same goes for Hydra's raw power. It will be interesting to see whether they are rebalanced this time to be ironically more viable. I also hope Hydra can finally hold its own against Dragoon, instead of feeling like the slightly less legendary machine. Naturally, we got more glimpses on the new map, and although hands-on previews had already shown some of these areas, I avoided them, so I was pleasantly surprised by everything we saw. We finally got a proper look at the new sky platform, and even caught a glimpse of a secret island far off on the horizon. I mentioned this in a previous video, but I adore how the new map rewards flying with real discoveries. In the original City Trial, flying wasn't particularly useful, since there weren't any special places to reach with it. I have no idea where this secret dimension is located, but the more I see of this new map, the less I miss the original city. Naturally, freerun will be the perfect way to explore Skya at your own pace, and I'm sure countless kids in this generation will end up playing house with their siblings here, just like we did back in the day. From what I understand, the map in City Trial is larger than initially expected, which makes sense given the increased player count. However, this also introduces a potential issue, especially for unexperienced players. They might never win. The voting system for minigames certainly helps, but it can still be tough to gain the upper hand against so many players in a single match. To avoid this problem, team battles have been added to City Trial, and they could seriously redefine the appeal of this mode. Roaming around a massive map with teammates to rely on creates a completely different gameplay feel, improves accessibility, and serves as a refreshing twist on the classic City Trial formula. While I was already fully content with what we have seen from this mode so far, I genuinely appreciate that even City Trial received new elements that distinguish it from its predecessor. I also didn't expect them, but absolutely welcomed the new field events, like the giant wheelies acting as mini-bosses, and most importantly, the halberd soaring in from above. It seems to function like a giant UFO from the original City Trial, flying over the map briefly and giving you a chance to board it and collect items before it vanishes. But even if the halberd doesn't do much beyond that, it's already a massive visual upgrade over a simple UFO. In the original Air Ride, boss fights were practically non-existent, limited to a single low-budget battle against an oversized King DDD who did little more than drive around aimlessly. While the music and atmosphere tried to inject some tension, the real challenge came from wrestling with the camera and awkwardly lining up attacks. I've always loved boss fights in games, in case that wasn't obvious by now, but given that this is a fundraiser, I kept my expectations in check. I figured they might throw in rival characters, maybe larger versions of existing riders, but what I never expected was a proper, unique, and genuinely exciting boss confrontation. I don't know what it is with Kirby and the serious urge to create as many robot DDD battles as possible, but they can keep coming if they look this good. The animation on this beast is fantastic, and thanks to the new lockout feature, it looks like fighting one big moving target might actually be fun this time. This is probably the closest we get to DDD being a villain again, and I suppose we just found a new potential Echo Fighter for Smash. Still, the most exciting part isn't Robot DDD himself, but what he brings along. As teased, there will be more bosses, including Nightmare and, what was arguably the most biggest twist in the entire Direct, Zero 2 from Kirby 64. Not the original Zero from Dreamland 3, but the actual Zero 2, who hasn't appeared since and has always remained one of the series' most mysterious figures. I've always appreciated disappointed that some characters in Kirby lore retain their mystique, and Zero never felt like the kind of antagonist who should make a regular appearance, giving his unsettling and rather brutal presence. But seeing him return in a setting like this, especially portrayed through Sakurai's lens, is incredibly exciting for every Kirby 64 fan. This also means there will be a remix of his theme. And did I already mention that this game looks too perfect for its own good? Apparently, Road Trip is going to be the teased story mode in Air Riders, and it totally scared everyone by looking like an open area mode similar to Mario Kart World. The next thing they could have done is decrease the chance of city trials showing up online and forcing people to play top right instead. From what I understand, Road Trip is more like Smash's classic mode, where you go through a series of individual challenges under special conditions. Occasionally, branching paths appear and let you choose items that affect your next route. Also, everyone's favorite character Magman appears. Thank God! Otherwise Sakurai would be really biased. I suppose the exact structure of this mode was intentionally left a little vague, but it seems likely to play out like a traditional roguelike. You gather stat boosting items throughout the road trip, switch between machines and try to become as powerful as possible. There will probably be incentives to complete the mode with every character, and hopefully the replay value will turn out to be just as surprisingly addictive as Kirby Fighters 2's story campaign, which has a similar design philosophy. However, Road Trip seems to be more than just a simple roguelike. At the end of the direct, it was revealed that the mode actually has a story premise. Machines begin falling from space, and in classic Kirby fashion, a new threat emerges in the form of Zora. The CGI cutscenes shown look incredibly high quality, and arguably even more polished than those in mainline Kirby titles. The teased scenes carry a surprisingly dramatic tone, and I believe the story campaign, or at least its cutscenes and final climax, will be far more spectacular than anyone expects. It reminds me of Smash Ultimate's World of Light. The mode itself was relatively budget friendly, but the cinematic sequences and epic final gave it a grand, memorable impact. The difference here is that with mainline Kirby games, fans have come to anticipate a familiar formula for the final. Not necessarily a bad thing, but predictable. With Sakurai at the helm, anything feels possible. The final moments of the direct evoke a surprisingly melancholic atmosphere, led by a simplistic yet haunting piano melody. Combined with the visuals, it feels distinctively different from what we typically see in a Kirby game. This is why the strange entity known as Zora remains such a mystery. He could be anything. From what we have seen, he seems to remain dormant, possibly in a rock-like state, until his wishes are fulfilled. To make that happen, he sends out Dark Riders to carry out his will. The DDD clone appeared to be the main one, but it's possible he could summon dark versions of every character. In one clip, we even catch a glimpse of a Dark Rider entering an arena that bears a strong resemblance to the DDD battle stage from the original Air Ride. This suggests we'll get unique rival boss fights just like the ones I proposed earlier. The ending teaser only deepened the mystery by reintroducing the Fountain of Dreams, and of all things, Galactic Nova, rendered in a striking detailed style that looks like something straight out one of those close-up hyper-realistic SpongeBob shorts. Nova has never looked more ominous or unpredictable. This is basically the Death Star of the Kirby universe. We don't yet know whether it's the same Nova from Kirby Superstar or an entirely new one, but considering Sakurai's well-documented love for Superstar, odds are it's the original. The sudden appearance of machines, Zora, the Fountain of Dreams and Galactic Nova must be connected somehow. But what's more crazy is that we're speculating about the lore and story of an Air Ride game. And even if the overall gameplay loop will be rather simplistic, I have high hopes for the general staging and final. Closing the direct with the announcement that there will be no DLC or follow-up entries was exactly the confirmation we needed to fully enjoy Air Riders. Of course you can always wish for more in games like this, but in an era where DLC is overpriced or feels like cut content sold later, it's refreshing to have a game that's complete at launch. This will be a full experience, rich in content from day one, something that can't be said for many modern titles. Air Riders isn't just a sequel to Air Ride, it's a celebration of the Kirby franchise as a whole, with all its references, music, returning features and sheer polish. It honestly feels like the Smash Bros of Kirby, and given the franchise's history, it's hard to imagine how they will ever top this. Air Riders might have the highest production value of any Kirby game to date, which is funny considering that Air Ride had one of the lowest and was a rushed spin-off. There's still a lot I haven't covered in detail. Shogoth Sakai, the composer of Air Ride, is back. Kirby's voice actor can be chosen as the announcer. The menu looks incredibly stylish and there are some surprisingly thoughtful accessibility ability options too, but I'm saving some of the big reveals like all the new characters and copy abilities for a separate video. Otherwise this would turn into a multi-hour deep dive review instead of what is supposed to be a direct impressions video. With only 4 months left until release, I plan to release a few more videos to keep the excitement for Air Riders going. Hopefully Nintendo holds off on announcing the next mainline title for a while, because Air Riders is shaping up to keep me busy for quite some time.
Switch 2で使えるゲームキューブコントローラーがあります。お楽しみたい方はこちらもどうぞ。マシン主体のゲームであれこれ叫ばれるのもうるさいですしね。縦操作でも十分遊べます。オプションなんていじらないような気もします。